Everyone feared the arrogant millionaire until the new waitress had enough. Everyone was terrified of him, the arrogant millionaire who thought he could buy anything and anyone. But when the new waitress stepped in, something changed. This wasn't just any waitress. She had a secret, a fire that no one saw coming. What happens when she finally snaps? Watch her make a decision that will flip his entire world upside down. Hey, store lover! Welcome to the Narrative Hub, Reddit Stories. Believe me, this adventure gets wild, but it's only epic with you. Seriously, you make this possible. Want more stories? Greater adventure? Smash subscribe right now. Smash like. Comment below. Let's go. Brutus Thorne's custom watch cost more than most people's cars. His Italian leather shoes could pay rent for 6 months. And for the past 5 years, he'd treated Romano's fine dining restaurant like his personal throne room, where staff trembled at his approach and managers bent over backward to satisfy his every whim. But tonight was different. Ruby Martinez had been working at Romano's for exactly 3 days. 24 years old, college dropout, carrying student debt that would make your head spin. She needed this job desperately. What she didn't need was the lecture from her manager about the rules when it came to table 7. Whatever he wants, he gets, Manager Peterson had whispered nervously. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak unless spoken to. And whatever you do, don't give him any reason to complain. At exactly 9:47 p.m., Brutus stormed through Romano's mahogany doors like he owned the place, because technically, he did own a significant stake in it. His net worth of $847 million gave him that kind of leverage. The restaurant fell silent as conversations died mid-sentence and waiters suddenly found urgent tasks in the kitchen. Ruby watched this display of power with curious eyes rather than fearful ones. She'd seen bullies before. Rich ones, poor ones, they all had the same playbook. Brutus slammed into his usual booth, already irritated. His business deal that evening had gone south, costing him millions, and he was looking for someone to take it out on. When Ruby approached with the wine menu, he didn't even look up. "Water's too warm," he barked, though he hadn't touched the glass. "Wine list's wrong vintage. And this table's dirty." Ruby calmly wiped the already spotless table. "I'll get you fresh water with ice, sir. What temperature would you prefer?" The question caught him off guard. Most staff just apologized and scurried away. "Room temperature. And make sure the ice doesn't touch the sides." For 20 minutes, Brutus found fault with everything. The bread was too crusty, then too soft when replaced. The lighting was wrong. The music was too loud, then too quiet. Each complaint was designed to humiliate, to show everyone in the restaurant who held the power. Ruby handled each impossible demand with professional calm, but those watching closely might have noticed her jaw tightening with each passing minute. The breaking point came when Brutus decided to make a show of it. In front of the packed restaurant, he raised his voice. "This service is absolutely pathetic. You're worthless, completely worthless. How did they even hire someone so incompetent?" The restaurant fell deadly silent. 30 pairs of eyes watched as Brutus continued his verbal assault, expecting to see another waitress crumble under the pressure of his wrath. Instead, Ruby set down her notepad with deliberate precision. She looked Brutus dead in the eye, the first time anyone had done so in months, and spoke in a voice calm enough to cut glass. "You know what, Mr. Thorne? You're absolutely right. I am sorry." Brutus smirked, thinking he'd won another victory. "But I'm not apologizing to you," Ruby continued, her voice growing stronger. "I'm apologizing to your son." The color drained from Brutus's face like someone had opened a valve. Ruby reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out her phone. With theatrical slowness, she showed him the contact name, Dad. "You see, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice now carrying through the silent restaurant, "I know exactly who you are. You're the man who destroyed Apex Industries 15 years ago. You bankrupted the company, fired 300 employees right before Christmas, and drove the CEO to a heart attack that killed him. Brutus's hands began to tremble. That CEO was my father, David Martinez. And after you destroyed him, after you took everything from us, I promised myself something. Ruby leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than any shout. I promised I'd look you in the eye someday and tell you exactly what I thought of you. The restaurant was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in untouched water glasses. But Ruby wasn't done. The funny thing about revenge, Mr. Thorne, is that sometimes it serves itself. You see, while you've been playing king in your little restaurant kingdom, I've been doing my homework. Did you know that Apex Industries had a patent portfolio worth about $50 million that somehow disappeared during the bankruptcy proceedings? Brutus's expensive suit was now soaked with sweat. Turns out, those patents were illegally transferred to a shell company, a company that just happened to be owned by, well, let me check my notes here. Ruby pulled out a folded document from her other pocket. Brutus Thorne. The gasps from other diners were audible now. Now, I'm not a lawyer, Mr. Thorne. I'm just a worthless waitress, remember? But my roommate is a federal prosecutor who's very interested in white-collar crime. And my boyfriend? He's a journalist at the Financial Times who's been looking for a big story. Ruby straightened up, smoothing her uniform. I came here for the job, Mr. Thorne. But staying to watch you realize that your entire empire is built on fraud? That's just a bonus. Brutus tried to stand, tried to speak, tried to regain some semblance of control, but no words came out. For the first time in 20 years, Brutus Thorne was speechless. Oh, and one more thing, Ruby said, picking up her notepad. That wine you sent back 3 times? It's a 1982 Bordeaux worth about $4,000 a bottle. You've been drinking the house wine for the past hour. Giuseppe in the kitchen switched them out after your second complaint. Even the staff here think you're a joke. Ruby turned to address the entire restaurant. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. Your meals tonight are compliments of Mr. Thorne, who I'm sure would love to celebrate his last night of freedom before the FBI comes knocking. As Ruby walked toward the kitchen, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled. Dad would be proud. Mom. Brutus Thorne sat alone in his booth, surrounded by the whispers and stares of people who now saw him not as a feared millionaire, but as exactly what he was, a criminal whose time had finally run out. The most powerful man in the city had been brought down not by another millionaire, not by corporate warfare, but by a waitress with a 3-day-old uniform and a 15-year-old promise. Sometimes justice doesn't come from the courts or the boardrooms. Sometimes it comes from a 24-year-old woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The last thing Brutus heard as Ruby disappeared into the kitchen was the sound of her laughter, free, victorious, and absolutely terrifying to a man who thought he could buy his way out of anything. But you can't buy your way out of the truth. And the truth, as they say, always has a way of serving itself.